Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Glad to be back.
Today we're tackling something that might seem a little unexpected.
Definitely a bit unusual.
We're diving into the world of balloons.
Balloons.
Yeah, those colorful emblems of parties and celebrations and get-togethers.
hmm
But as we'll soon find out, those seemingly harmless balloons are actually stirring up a bit of controversy.
They really are. And what's fascinating to me is that it's not just about, someone being a party pooper or disliking the aesthetics.
Right.
It goes much deeper.
It does.
We're talking safety, environmental impact, and really that tricky balance between upholding traditions and, adapting to some new realities.
Exactly. And we've got some really interesting sources lined up for today. A lot of articles, actually, about a surprising ban on metallic balloons in New Orleans.
Oh, wow.
Now, you might be thinking New Orleans.
Yeah,
The city known for throwing a party for everything.
that's what I was thinking.
Right. But this ban actually sheds light on some of those unintended consequences
Yeah.
of our celebrations.
That's right. And it's not just, some residents complaining about litter or anything like that.
Right.
This was a decision made by the city council.
Wow.
They actually voted to ban releasing metallic balloons because of repeated problems they were having with their power grid and sewer systems.
Interesting.
Apparently, these stray balloons drifting into power lines were causing short circuits.
Oh.
And that was leading to some significant power outages.
I have to admit, picturing a balloon taking down a power grid is kind of funny.
Yeah, I can see that.
But you're saying this is a legitimate problem.
It's more common than you might think.
Really?
We're talking about disruptions to really essential city services like water treatment facilities, even an incident where a city worker was injured
Oh,
because of an outage related to a balloon.
jeez.
Remember, these metallic balloons are basically giant conductors,
Right, yeah.
and when they touch those power lines, it's like a recipe for disaster.
Okay, so it's not just about a few flickering lights.
No.
We're talking about potential safety hazards and, disruption of these vital city services.
Exactly. And what I found really interesting is that the council member who was really pushing for this ban,
Yeah.
he was motivated by similar incidents that were happening all across the country. He even mentioned a story where a metallic confetti cannon nearly set a parade float on fire.
Hold on now, confetti cannon.
I know, right?
Those are under scrutiny, too.
It seems so.
I mean, they're practically synonymous with parades and celebrations.
They are a staple.
Yeah.
But apparently, New Orleans had already banned confetti cannons and even loose confetti
Wow.
at parades back in July, citing safety concerns again.
So this raises a really interesting question. How far do we go in regulating our celebrations for the sake of safety? I mean, is there a point where it feels like we're sacrificing the joy
Right.
and spontaneity of these events?
That is a great question, and I think that is really the heart of this whole debate.
Yeah.
And it's not just limited to New Orleans either. This tension between maintaining traditions and ensuring public safety is happening everywhere.
Right.
Remember the University of Nebraska example,
Oh, yeah.
where students released thousands of balloons during their homecoming game?
I do.
Even that long-standing tradition is being challenged now.
That's right. I remember reading about that. So are we headed towards a future where all balloons are banned, no matter what the occasion?
It's really hard to say for sure, but this New Orleans ban definitely brings up some important questions about the environmental impact of our celebrations.
Right.
Even the ones we think of as harmless.
Exactly.
It forces us to look beyond, just the immediate spectacle and think about the long-term consequences.
You're right. We often focus on the visual appeal of balloons, those bright colors floating in the air.
Yeah,
But we don't always think about where they end up.
right.
It's easy to forget that even those biodegradable balloons take years to decompose.
Absolutely.
And the strings can be even worse.
Yeah, that's a crucial point because that term biodegradable can be misleading.
Yeah.
People might assume it means the balloons vanish quickly and harmlessly, but that's not always the case.
So even if we're trying to be environmentally conscious, those so-called eco-friendly balloons might not be as innocent as they seem.
Exactly. And then there's the whole issue of wildlife mistaking balloons for food,
Oh, yeah.
which can cause all sorts of problems.
I read a study about that.
Yeah.
They found balloon fragments in the stomachs of sea turtles and birds.
It's heartbreaking to think about.
It is.
And it's not just a few stray balloons.
Right.
We're talking millions of balloons released globally each year,
Wow.
and many of them end up in our oceans,
Yeah.
harming marine life.
So this issue goes way beyond just a few power outages in New Orleans.
It does.
We're talking about a much larger problem with far-reaching consequences.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder, are there other ways to celebrate that don't come at such a high cost to the planet?
Now, that's a discussion I'm really eager to dive into.
Me too.
But first, let's take a look at some of the arguments against banning balloons altogether.
Okay.
Because there are people whose livelihoods are directly affected by these restrictions.
That's true. There are.
Yeah.
It's important to consider all sides of this.
Absolutely.
And that includes people like Desiree Ontiveros.
Yeah.
She's a balloon business owner in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
And she argues that instead of banning balloons, the city should invest in upgrading its infrastructure.
That's an interesting perspective.
It is.
She's essentially saying the problem isn't the balloons themselves.
Right.
It's the vulnerability of the power grid.
Exactly. And to be fair, those infrastructure improvements,
Yeah.
they could potentially reduce the risk of balloons causing these outages. But we have to remember, even with better infrastructure,
Right.
those balloons are still going to end up somewhere in the environment.
That's a good point. So we need to think beyond just fixing the power lines.
We
We need to think about the entire life cycle of these balloons
Yes.
and their impact on the ecosystem.
Exactly. And that brings us to a much bigger question.
Mm-hmm.
How can we balance that desire to celebrate
Yeah.
with the responsibility to protect our planet?
Now, this is where things get really interesting.
It does.
Because it's not just about finding alternative materials for balloons.
Right?
It's about rethinking our entire approach to celebrations.
I agree completely. And that's where we'll pick up
Okay.
after a quick break.
Sounds good.
Stay with us.
All right, so we've talked about the environmental impact of balloons,
Mm-hmm.
even those that are marketed as eco-friendly.
Right.
But let's be realistic. Balloons are pretty ingrained in our culture of celebration.
Yeah, they are.
What are the alternatives? Are we all doomed to, like, joyless birthday parties and super lame parades?
Not at all. I think this is a really cool opportunity to get creative
Yeah.
and rethink how we celebrate.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. The main function of a balloon is visual. It's about adding color and movement and kind of a festive vibe.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So maybe we need to shift our focus away from the object itself
Yeah.
and more towards the desired effect.
Exactly.
So how else can we achieve that visual impact without relying on balloons?
Oh, there are so many possibilities. Imagine like replacing those balloon arches you see with really vibrant floral installations or cascading ribbons.
I like that.
Or instead of releasing balloons into the air,
Yeah.
how about creating these amazing displays of pinwheels or flags or kites? You know, the things that'll dance in the wind.
I love those ideas.
Yeah.
It's about using those natural elements
Yeah.
to create that sense of wonder and celebration.
Exactly. And don't forget about light. We could use like projected lights to create patterns on buildings or even choreograph these cool light shows in the sky.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's sustainable,
Yeah,
it's visually stunning, and it opens up so many creative possibilities.
right.
But I do wonder about those occasions that are more sentimental, where releasing balloons has a deeper meaning. Like, I've seen people release balloons to honor loved ones who have passed away.
That's a really important point. Balloons can hold a lot of emotional significance for people,
Yeah.
and we need to be sensitive to that. But I do think there are other ways to express those feelings
Okay.
that are both meaningful and good for the environment.
Like, how can we honor loved ones without releasing balloons?
Instead of releasing balloons, we could plant trees in their memory.
Oh, wow.
It's a really nice way to create a lasting tribute.
Yeah.
And it also benefits the environment.
That's a really thoughtful idea. And it's something families can do together,
Right.
which adds another layer of meaning.
Exactly.
What are some other alternatives?
Well, we could encourage the use of biodegradable lanterns. They create a similar visual effect to balloons, but they break down quickly and safely. Or what about releasing butterflies as a symbol of transformation and new beginnings?
Those are all really beautiful and symbolic gestures. It seems like with a little creativity, we can preserve those special moments
Right.
without harming the planet.
Definitely. But there's another piece to this puzzle.
Right.
Education. Even with all these great alternatives, if people don't know about the harm balloons can cause, they're not likely to change their behavior.
You're right. It's about awareness,
Yeah,
not just offering alternatives.
exactly.
So how do we get this message out to more people?
We can use social media campaigns, educational programs in schools, community outreach,
Right.
partnerships with businesses.
Uh-huh.
Imagine if those eco-friendly balloon labels actually had information about proper disposal
Yeah.
and the risks to wildlife.
That's a great idea. It's about making sure people have the right information
Yeah.
so they can make informed choices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's about creating a sense of responsibility together.
Yeah.
This isn't about shaming anyone for what they've done in the past.
Right.
It's about all of us working together to create a more sustainable future.
This whole conversation has really changed how I think about balloons.
Yeah.
I used to think they were just these harmless symbols of fun.
Yeah.
But now I realize there's a lot more to it.
There is, and I think the biggest takeaway is that we don't have to choose between celebrating and protecting our planet.
Yeah.
With a little creativity and a willingness to adapt, we can do both.
So for our listeners, what's one thing they can do today to be a part of this change?
Well, next time you're planning a celebration, think about the alternatives to balloons.
Yeah.
Think about what you want to express and find creative ways to do it without harming the environment.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to talk to your friends and family about it.
Yeah.
The more we talk about it, the more likely we are to make a difference.
Well said. Yeah. It's really empowering to know that we all have a part to play in creating a more sustainable and joyful future.
Absolutely. And that leads us to a thought-provoking question to leave you with. How can we redefine what celebration means? So that it includes not just our own joy,
but also taking care of the world around us.
You know, this whole balloon conversation, it's really got me thinking about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
It's not just about, eco-friendly party supplies.
Right.
It's about how we balance tradition and progress.
You've hit on something really important.
Yeah.
This balloon thing, it's like a tiny example of a much bigger challenge we face as a society.
Okay.
How do we honor our past while still embracing a future that needs new ways of thinking and behaving?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We touched on this before with that University of Nebraska thing,
Right.
releasing balloons after that first touchdown.
Yeah.
It's a tradition going back decades.
It is.
It's part of their identity, their school spirit. So asking them to just abandon that, even for environmental reasons, it's going to be tough.
Of course, traditions give us a sense of continuity, a connection to the past, a feeling of belonging.
Yeah.
But they can also hold us back or even become harmful.
If we cling to them without thinking about their impact.
It's like that saying, tradition is not the worship of ashes, but the preservation of fire.
I love that.
How do we keep that fire burning without, getting burned?
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
I think the key is open communication, empathy, and a willingness to adapt. Instead of just saying traditions are outdated or irrelevant, we need to understand why they're important, acknowledge the feelings they bring up, and then explore ways to evolve them.
So in the case of Nebraska, instead of just saying no more balloons, it's about talking with the students, understanding why this tradition matters so much to them.
Exactly.
And then brainstorming different ways to celebrate. Maybe they create an awesome light show, plant a tree on campus after each win, or even donate to an environmental cause.
I like that.
Yeah. It shows that we don't have to choose between tradition and progress. We don't. We can blend them together, create something new and meaningful.
And this applies to so many things we face as a society.
Yeah.
New technologies, climate change, our consumption habits.
Right.
It's about approaching change with respect for the past.
Yeah.
And a commitment to a better future.
So what does this all mean for our listeners?
Well, next time you encounter a tradition that maybe clashes with your values, don't just dismiss it. Think about its history, its significance, and ask yourself, how can we honor the spirit of this while also making it work for the present and the future?
That's a powerful question.
It is. And as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of balloons, I hope it encourages you to think critically about your own choices, even the ones that seem small. Because as we've learned, even something as simple as a balloon can have a ripple effect far beyond our celebrations.
Well said. It's been a fascinating discussion.
It has. Thanks for joining us, everyone.